A biblical perspective on life, culture and current events. This is 2020 on Vision.
On a Tuesday, we like to catch up with Greg Bondar, National Spokesperson for the Christian Voice Australia organisation. It's a national think tank and advocacy group for families, liberty and faith. Greg Bondar, a special welcome back to 2020.
Good morning, Neil. Thank you very much for the invitation again.
I think I've whet the appetite of some believers listening to our conversation today, talking about the significance of the Trump victory in the US presidential election for Christians. And this is not the sort of conversation you get in mainstream media, but on a program like 2020, give us your overall insight here about significance.
Yeah, thank you, Neil. I think we need to appreciate that Trump's victory has significance globally, but in particular for the Christian community. And I've been doing some research and talking to a lot of leaders, evangelical leaders, and there's a number of things that we need to appreciate about Trump's victory. But don't forget, Neil, that some are even saying that he now has not only a democratic mandate, but a divine mandate. Well, we've got to sort of question some of that, but I certainly think that Trump has a lot to offer for Christians both in America and globally, Neil.
What about all of the dark sides of Donald Trump? And I know that there are a lot of Christians who might be looking at character and morality and the stories that have been dredged up from the past. Any thoughts there, if you're talking about a Trump victory and what sort of significance there are for Christians? Some of those things are relevant, aren't they?
Absolutely. Now, look, as a Christian, I have to question. Trump's been married 3 times. He was found liable for sexual abuse. He's hardly the fit of a perfect Christian father or husband. But that aside, let's look at the political side of things for the moment. As I said, he's not my type of man from a personal perspective, but politically and in terms of economically, I think he's going to have a lot to offer for Christians, as I said, in America and globally now.
Well, you like to reflect on not just the character or the appearance or what someone says, but on what they actually have done. So it's really that sort of where the rubber hits the road. What can you reflect so far as his contribution, that Christians might have some level of confidence in his leadership?
Yeah, Neil, look, I think we need to recognise, what Trump has done from 2020 right up to the election 2024, just a few weeks ago. Trump in his first term of office made a pact that he would welcome Christian leaders to the White House, and he did. So he won the loyalty of many of the evangelical Christians. As you know, the Supreme Court had 3 justices appointed, overturned Roe and Wade. And not only that, but back in 2016, Neil, and I went back and you know what he actually said? He said at the presidential nomination that Christianity will have power. And I think he repeated that again in 2024 when he said, Neil, that Christians will be granted power at a level that you've never used before. Now, that's promising, and let's see what that's going to offer for Christians nationally in America and globally.
And, of course, he's attracting a lot of attention for the statements that he has, even as he's president-elect, to resolve some of the issues. A lot of the things that we talk about in our Australian context, he's talking about resolving in the US context around, what is a woman and gender issues, sexuality in the trans agenda. He's promising to crack down on some of those things.
Absolutely. I think America, and Trump in particular, has had enough of the woke ideology. And what he's actually said in his campaign, Neil, that he will have a task force that will investigate all forms of illegal discrimination, harassment and persecution against Christians in America. But on top of that, Neil, and I'm pleased about this, now we've got to be very gentle about this, but he's going to wind back some of the privileges and abuse that the transgender people have had in schools or society. And I think whilst we're going to be very careful of that, I think that he's now saying to people, I've had enough of this woke economy. I've had enough of the transgender ideology, and that needs to be rolled back. So that's good news in many ways if you're a Bible-believing Christian.
Okay, what sort of campaign observations did you have during that time of the campaign? Of course, a rise, you might even say, a landslide victory for him in the US. What is that saying to nations? What it's saying to the Christian community? What are your observations?
Yeah, Neil, one of the things, there's a couple of things that I've really want to bring to your attention and to your listeners. Number one, isn't it great that the silent majority have spoken? They've actually said, this is the man we want, this is the policies we want. Now, the Democrats still refuse to accept that in many ways. Secondly, Neil, and you and I both know this, the polls were driven by the media, and the media rhetoric, of course, left-wing, woke ideology, were always backing Kamala Harris, and in that regard, they were driving the poll, so they were really sending the wrong signals. And thirdly, I think, Neil, that there were men and women that actually went out and held rallies in support. This is Christian men and women, held support for Trump, and as a result, we've had over 80% of white evangelicals back Trump in the election, and around about 76% of Latino evangelicals also back Trump, and about 14% black evangelicals. So that's a pretty good resounding, confirmation of Trump's commitment to Christianity, I think.
Okay, so he is right now president-elect, and he won't formally take the reins of office again until the 20th of January. What sort of things are you anticipating that Christians might expect from this Trump victory?
Well, there are about 3 or 4 points that I've sort of really drilled down. And number one is, isn't it interesting that the Republican House Speaker, Mike Johnson, whom you've heard of from Louisiana, he has said before that America was founded as an explicitly Christian nation. Now that we've got Trump in there and Mike Johnson, I think you'll see a greater connection between church and state, if you will. Secondly, I think that you'll find that the evangelicals will urge Trump to roll back the abortion, issues, because that's really getting out of control in America. Abortion's a big issue. And the next thing I think you need to be aware of is that, Christians will be primed in a good position to provide Trump with some theological, moral and spiritual advice on family, faith and freedom. And I think that's critical. Here they are, they're ready to go say, look, Trump, you've got to make sure that you confirm to your commitment to protect Christianity, therefore behave in a biblical manner, if you will.
Let me come back to something I suggested even back into the introduction. This thought that a Trump victory is seen as the third great awakening, perhaps the beginning of a global revival of the Christian faith around the world. I think we could probably argue there's already revival happening, and we just don't hear about it as often as we'd like. But what are your thoughts on this concept of a third great awakening, and that Donald Trump might be part of that?
Look, I'm of the view that there is a sort of a de facto third great awakening. The awakenings 1 and 2, when we're going back to the 1700s and what have you, Neil, this could just be the impetus that's needed to revive Christianity. We've had declining church numbers. We've had people too afraid to speak up because of being cancelled, to speak up in terms of defending their faith. And I think of 1 Peter 3:15, be prepared to give an answer for the hope that you have. And we've been reluctant to do that, Neil, because of being in fear of being cancelled. So I think this is going to be a de facto great awakening for America and globally, no?
Interesting. Just a little aside here, your thoughts, because some people will be thinking, well, that's all very good for America. But here we are in Australia, and we're separate in Australia. We're not under the leadership of anyone, even though they might have a propensity to promote and defend Christianity. Here we are in Australia. Do you think, though, the ripple effect of the leader of the free world will eventually find its way to influence the way Australians are thinking? We've got another federal election coming up early next year. Any thoughts there on the sort of ripple effect there that might be moving around the world?
Yeah, absolutely, Neil. Look, you know the old saying economically, when America sneezes, Australia catches a cold. I mean, the whole issue there being when something happens in America, it's going to filter through to us. And quite frankly, I think, Albanese, the Prime Minister here, is put on notice to say, look, the silent majority are there. So my view is, and I love it because the old tagline, make America great, I think now my tagline is, Neil, make Christianity great again. Because that's what's going to be happening if Trump is true to his word. And that transcends to Australia.
Now, you're the national spokesperson for Christian Voice Australia, and for a lot of listeners, they'll know you also wear the hat of CEO of a significant global movement, at least the Australian branch of that, called Every Home for Christ. And before on this program, we've talked about an initiative that you've got going called Rechurching Australia. Is there some connection here, or is there some momentum that comes with a Trump victory that comes back to this Rechurching Australia that we all might be excited about?
Yeah, Neil, thanks for asking that, because Every Home for Christ was in Albury about 2 weeks ago, and we had a 3-day School of Prayer and Discipleship training, and we sat down and we spoke to church leaders. We had people come and discuss the issues they had, and they were saying, Neil, that there's a real issue in terms of the church needing to engage more with the community. They were very worried that the digital move to discipleship is not really meeting the elderly community's needs. And finally, I think also, that they're saying to me that the church needs to re-engage. And these findings that we found in Albury mirror pretty much the McCrindle report from 2020, Neil. Isn't that amazing that, that thinking by congregations, whether Baptist or Anglican or Presbyterian, are still thinking that the church needs to engage with the community.
Some concepts along the lines that there is some disillusionment with church in the Australian community, but there actually is a spiritual hunger and an openness there. Yeah. That's the sort of thing that you discovered too, aligned with that sort of research.
Absolutely. Look, I have to tell you, I had 2 wonderful missionaries from Samoa, and by the way, I'm off to Samoa on Friday to do some discipleship and missionary work in Samoa for a week. But we had two missionaries come and talk at this event in Albury, and they were talking about the need to engage at all levels, whether at work, home or play. But in particular, the people were saying to us that for some reason the churches in particular, those regions, were getting very insular, and they wanted more engagement. They wanted more say in the way that the church was heading. So congregations were looking for a way to engage in the dialogue of where do we go next? Is there a future for the church in Australia? So they're really saying, how can we be involved now?
And just quickly, one more thing. Here we are, mid-November already, and where did the year go? Every Home for Christ, you've got some Christmas initiatives coming up, one that's on tomorrow. What's happening at the New South Wales Parliament House tomorrow?
Oh, Neil, thank you for asking, because we've got the theatre completely booked out. We've got over 160 people attending. We've got some Christian politicians telling us how important it is to have Christians in Parliament, in politics as well. And we've got some very good speakers from Gary Kent's going to be showing his world premiere film on Jesus, which is one you want to keep your eye out for, Neil, when you get a chance. But not only that, we've got a local, fancy having somebody from Brisbane come to Sydney to talk at our event. And I'm pleased to say that we've got Matt Prater coming down, who's going to deliver our Christmas message. So I'm really pleased to have Matt join our event here tomorrow at Parliament House now.
Well, Matt gets around, doesn't he? Hey, for listeners, is there still space for another body or two in that celebration, or is it sold out?
Oh, Neil, we've got a few more spots left. If they want to get onto the everyhandforchrist.org.au website, I'm sure they'll be able to book. But we're nearly full capacity. But it's going to be a real event, Neil, because isn't it great that we can bring Christianity to a place like Parliament House?
Okay, so 2 websites. You might want to just check out that if you're a Sydney-sider and even just aligning with what's happening with the Christmas celebrations there, everyhomeforchrist.org.au. But also check out some of the blogs, some of the research, some of the articles that you'll find at christianvoiceaustralia.blog. christianvoiceaustralia.blog. Greg Bondar is National Spokesperson for Christian Voice Australia, a national think tank and advocacy group for families, liberty and faith. Greg, thanks so much for your update again today on 2020.
Bless you, Neil, and thank you for your support.
Thanks for taking time to listen to this audio on demand from Vision Christian Media. To find out more about us, go to vision.org.au.